The wind blew coal dust across the edge of the mining colony on planet Arxen 3. It was a dead place, with rusted metal buildings, gray skies, and no green in sight. No one smiled here, not even the stars above. In the back alley near the supply depot, something moved behind the trash bins, a low whimper, followed by the sound of torn cloth scraping against stone. Vesha pressed her large body into the shadows. She was taller than most alien females, her skin a dull violet with glowing veins along her arms. Her kind, the Varneks, believed in beauty as small, soft, and perfect. Vesha was none of those. Her broad shoulders, thick tail, and powerful legs made her different. To them, she was a joke. A failure, too big to bond, they had said. Too strong to breed, just a worker beast. She curled up behind the bin, hiding from the others. Today, they had thrown rocks at her again. A bruise had formed on her cheek, and her long hair was covered in dust. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. No one wanted to hire her, and no one wanted to see her face. That's when she heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, but not threatening. She looked up quickly, frightened, ready to run if needed. A human man stood there. He wore an old coat, boots covered in dust, and had a kind face hidden behind a short beard. In his hand was a small food box, still warm. "Still fresh. I saw you yesterday," he said gently. "You didn't eat then either." Vesha blinked. Her breath stuck in her throat. She looked around in fear. Sure, this was some trick. "You don't want me." "Human," she whispered, her voice shaky. I'm not worth anything." The man didn't move closer, didn't push her. He just crouched slowly and placed the box on the ground between them. "My name's Eli," he said. "This is for you, if you want it." Vesha stared at the box. Then at him, she shook her head. "Do you know what I am?" He nodded. "You're hungry." She flinched like he had slapped her with kindness. "No one helps me," she said, her voice breaking. "They call me a mistake." Eli leaned back against the wall, sitting down beside the bin, but not too close. "I don't see a mistake," he said quietly. "I see someone left out in the cold." Vesha didn't know why, but tears filled her eyes. She hadn't cried in a long time. Not like this. Not from kindness. Slowly, carefully, she reached for the box and opened it. Inside was a cooked root dish with a thick broth, human food. But not poisoned, not a trap. She ate quickly, her eyes never leaving Eli's face. He just smiled, watching her eat like it was the most normal thing in the galaxy. "Why?" she finally asked, licking her fingers clean. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone should," he said simply. "And I think you've been alone long enough." Vesha shook her head. "I'm not breeding material," she said bitterly. "No Varneks male wants me. I'm too big, too strong, too different." Eli raised an eyebrow. "Good thing I'm not Varneks then." Her eyes widened slightly. "You can't mean that." "I do," he replied. "You're not broken, Vesha. You've just been lied to." Silence filled the space between them, thick and warm, for the first time in years. Vesha didn't feel invisible. She didn't feel like garbage. She felt seen. He stood up slowly and offered a hand. "You don't have to come with me," he said softly. "But if you want a warm place to sleep and no one throwing rocks, my home's open." Vesha stared at his hand, her heart pounding. She had never been offered a hand not like this, not from a male, not without fear or shame. She didn't know what to say, so she took it. Her large hand engulfed his, but Eli didn't flinch. He simply pulled her up gently. And for a moment, under the dead sky of Arxan 3, something alive sparked in her chest. As they walked toward his small house near the cliffs, Vesha whispered again, "You don't want me, human?" Eli glanced back at her and smiled. "We'll see about that," he said, and kept walking, Behind them, the shadows watched. And somewhere far in the distance, a signal was sent. Someone had noticed, and not everyone was happy she had been found. Vesha had never stepped into a place like this before. It was small, built with human hands from scrap metal and stone, but it felt warm. There was a soft humming noise from a solar heater, and the scent of cooked herbs lingered in the air. She stood at the doorway awkwardly, unsure if she should take another step. Eli had already walked ahead, tossing his coat over a chair and switching on a small kettle. Shh. He didn't rush her, didn't force her. "Come in if you want," he said gently. "The floor doesn't bite." Vesha's large foot hesitated, then stepped inside. The floor creaked a little under her weight. But Eli didn't seem to notice. She folded her arms tightly, trying to make herself smaller. Everything in the house looked built for someone half her size. She kept her eyes low, not wanting to break anything. "You can sit if you'd like," Eli said, pointing to a wide chair near the wall. She slowly moved toward it and sat, half afraid the chair would crack under her. To her surprise, it held. He must have reinforced it, maybe for lifting supplies or gear. He handed her a steaming cup of something sweet and warm. She sniffed it first, eyes cautious, then took a sip. Her lips curled slightly. It was good, not just the taste, but the feeling of being served something without fear. For a long moment, they sat in silence. The crackle of the kettle, the soft hum of the heater, the faraway wind outside. Vesha looked around, eyes drifting over the walls. There were old pictures, a small music player, and a strange carved stone shaped like a bird. "This is your home?" she asked softly. Eli nodded. "Been here 5 years now, alone." He shrugged. "Sometimes that's better than being with the wrong people." Vesha looked down at her hands, thick fingers wrapped around the warm cup. "You didn't answer me earlier," she said. "Why are you being kind to me?" Eli leaned back in his chair and smiled, because kindness shouldn't be rare. She didn't believe that. Not yet. Not after all she'd suffered. "Do you know what they call me?" she whispered. "Among my people." Eli nodded slowly. "I've heard some of it. Beast, mutant, breeding failure," she said bitterly. "Too big, too strange, unworthy." He didn't interrupt her. She had never said these words out loud. Not like this. "I was meant to serve in labor colonies," she continued. "Lift heavy things, carry supplies, clean waste." She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I once asked a Varnix, male, if he would consider me as a mate." Her lips curled into a pained smile. He laughed for 10 minutes. Then she looked up at Eli. Her eyes filled with something fragile. "And now you look at me like I'm not broken. I don't think you are." Eli replied, "You don't know me," she said, voice shaking. "You don't know what I've done just to eat." "I don't care," he said quietly. "What matters is who you are when you're not trying to survive." Vesha stared at him like he was speaking another language. Kindness without a price. That didn't exist in her world, but maybe it did in his. Suddenly, her tail swung too wide and knocked over a pot from the table. It clattered to the floor and rolled near Eli's feet. She jumped up in panic. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean." Eli raised a hand gently. "It's okay, just a pot." She reached for it quickly, trying to hide her shame. Her size had always been a curse. But Eli knelt beside her, placed the pot back, and smiled again. "No harm." "Done," he said. "You're not used to peace yet, are you?" That question struck her deeply. She wasn't. Peace was a stranger she had never met. "You don't know what you're doing," she said softly. "Taking me in, maybe not." Eli answered, "But I know what I feel when I see you." She blinked. "And what's that?" "That someone strong has been hurting for too long." The heater crackled again, filling the silence. For the first time, Vesha allowed herself to relax, even just a little. She leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. Not fully asleep, but no longer alert like prey. Eli didn't disturb her. He simply sat nearby, working on something at the table, repairing an old drone arm or maybe building a tool. Vesha opened one eye and watched him. He looked tired, maybe lonely, but peaceful, not like the others who wore masks of cruelty. He was real, and somehow he made her feel real too. As night fell, the wind outside grew stronger, but inside that little home, the quiet warmth remained. Vesha whispered again, not expecting him to hear, "Maybe I'll stay one more day." And Eli, without looking up, replied softly, "You're welcome to stay as long as you want." 3 days had passed since Vesha stepped into Eli's home, and each day felt stranger than the last. Not because of danger, but because there was none. No shouting, no hunger, no fear, just quiet mornings, hot food, and the strange human who treated her like she mattered. She helped around the house now, though clumsy with tools. Her large hands fumbled with small wires and delicate devices. But Eli never shouted. He just chuckled and fixed whatever she broke, still in the back of her mind. Vesha couldn't relax. She woke up each morning with a jolt, expecting to be dragged outside. Punished, chained again. She had escaped a system that didn't forgive runaways. And Eli had brought her in without asking what it would cost him. She watched him fix a solar battery one afternoon. His sleeves rolled up, arms greasy with machine oil. He looked calm, focused, peaceful, and something inside her ached. "Eli," she said suddenly, her voice lower than usual. He glanced up with a smile. "Yeah." "You shouldn't have brought me here." He blinked, surprised. "Why?" "They'll punish you if they find out," she whispered. "I'm branded property." Eli put down the tool in his hand. "You're not property to me," he said calmly. "They don't care what you think," she said, fear rising in her throat. "They care about rules." Eli leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. "What happened, Vesha?" he asked gently. "Before I found you." Her jaw tightened. She didn't want to remember, but she owed him the truth. "I was sent to the outer camp as a heavy laborer," she said, "too big for any other role. They told me I'd never be chosen for bonding. So I worked year after year until my muscles ached and my soul broke." She took a shaky breath. "Then I escaped." Eli nodded slowly. "So you're a fugitive." She looked down, shame burning in her cheeks. "You can still turn me in," she said, voice shaking. "There's a reward. I'm not interested in credits." He replied without hesitation. "But they might come looking," she whispered. And if they do, before she could finish, a loud thump echoed outside. Vesha froze, her body going rigid. Eli stood up slowly. Reaching for the old plasma tool hanging by the door, they both moved toward the window outside. A large hover truck had landed at the edge of the property. 2 armored figures stepped out, Varnek's enforcers. They were scanning the area with handheld devices. Eli narrowed his eyes. "Looks like they're not here for dinner." Vesha stepped back, shaking. "They found me," she whispered. "I should run." "You're not running," Eli said, firm and calm. "Not this time, but—" "They'll hurt you," she protested. "They always do, when someone hides one of us." He didn't answer. Instead, he opened the door and stepped outside. Vesha stood in the shadows, barely breathing. Through the crack in the wall, she watched as Eli faced the enforcers. They were taller, armed, voices sharp and cold. "You've taken in a Class B labor fugitive." One of them barked. Eli didn't flinch. "She's my bonded mate," he said, voice steady. "By Treaty Law 7, Article 4. Section C, human settlers are permitted 1 interspecies mate." The enforcers stared at him, clearly surprised. One of them raised a scanner. "There's no record of this bonding." Eli shrugged. "Filed it offline. She's mine." "You'll be fined," the enforcer growled. "Then fine me," Eli replied. "But you don't get to take her." inside the house, Vesha's knees trembled. No one had ever claimed her like that. Not with such calm, not with such truth. Not even her own kind had ever spoken those words. About her, after a long, tense pause, the enforcers exchanged a look. "You'll be watched." One of them warned, "If she causes trouble, we take her back." Eli nodded once. "She won't," with a hiss of thrusters. The hover truck lifted off and vanished into the gray sky. Eli stepped back inside, closing the door behind him. Vesha looked at him like he was a stranger, a good kind of stranger. "You lied." She said softly, "No," he said. "I just made the law work for you instead of against you." She walked forward slowly, chest tight with emotions she couldn't name. "You called me your mate." "I did," he said, looking into her eyes. "Because that's how I see you." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't deserve that." He smiled gently, brushing a strand of her hair aside. "You deserve more than you've ever been given," for the first time in her life. Vesha didn't feel like a mistake. She felt protected. And that was something worth holding on to. The days grew quieter after the patrol left, but Vesha could feel the weight of their visit in the air. Eli didn't talk about it much. He went on with his daily routine, fixing solar panels, cooking meals, repairing tools, but he was always watching the sky just a little more than before. Vesha tried to help more now. She chopped wood outside, swept the floor, and even cleaned the water filters. Her big hands weren't good with delicate tasks. But she worked hard. Eli never told her she was doing it wrong. He just smiled, sometimes correcting gently, sometimes letting her finish the job her way. But it was the way he looked at her now that made her nervous, not like the others used too full of disgust or laughter. Not like those who saw her as nothing but labor. No. Eli's eyes were warm, focused, sometimes soft, and sometimes something else entirely, and that scared her more than anything. One evening, she was outside by the storage bin, moving heavy crates. She wore one of Eli's shirts, barely fit. Her shoulders too wide and her tail sticking out. Awkwardly still, she wore it because it smelled like firewood, oil, and him. Eli came outside holding 2 mugs, steam rising from them. "Break time," he said. Handing her one, she took it with a grunt and sat on a crate. He sat beside her, just far enough not to crowd her. The sunset was a blend of red and silver over the hills, the kind of beauty Vesha had never stopped to notice before. But tonight, sitting beside him, she saw it. And then she noticed him. His eyes weren't on the sky. They were on her. She blinked, her chest tightening. "Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. Eli tilted his head. "Like what?" "Like I'm beautiful." He didn't answer for a moment. Then he turned to her fully, setting his mug down. "Because you are," he said simply. She shook her head. "You know that's not true. Who told you that?" He asked. "My people, my trainers, my commanders." She replied, "Everyone." Eli leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'm not everyone," he said. "I see strength in you, yes, but I also see softness, kindness, something they chose to ignore." Vesha looked away, her throat tight. "You're just saying that to make me feel better?" "No," he replied. "I'm saying it because it's real." Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't cold. She stared at the hills, then down at her hand scarred, thick, rough. "These hands were made to lift and carry, not to touch or be touched," she muttered. Eli reached out and placed his hand on hers. It was smaller, warmer, but steady. "I don't care what they were made for," he said. "I care what they can do now." Her eyes filled with something she didn't recognize at first. Hope. Warm, trembling hope. That night, after they finished eating, she helped him clean up the dishes. The house was quiet. except for the low buzz of the heater and the soft rustle of wind against the metal walls. She stood in the kitchen, drying. A bowl, he stood behind her, close but not touching. She turned to hand him the bowl and stopped. Their faces were inches apart. Her breath caught in her throat. He wasn't looking at the bowl. He was looking at her lips. "Eli," she whispered. "I'm not ready." He pulled back gently. "That's okay," he said softly. "We go slow. Your pace." Her eyes searched his. No pressure, no demand, just patience. It broke something inside her, in the best way. "I've never," she began. But the words faded. He nodded. "I know." She stepped back, heart pounding. "I'll sleep near the heater tonight." She said, "Not in the room, okay?" he replied. "Wherever you feel safe." That night, she curled up by the heater with a blanket he gave her. And for the first time, she didn't cry herself to sleep. She just lay there, hand over her chest, feeling the beat of something new. Something alive, something hers. In the middle of the night, she opened her eyes. She didn't know why. She turned her head and saw Eli in the other room, sitting at the window. He was awake, watching the stars, protecting her even while she slept. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. She just closed her eyes and whispered, "Why do you look at me like that?" And somewhere, deep down, she already knew the answer. Vesha had always known her body was different, stronger, larger, heavier. She had been told it was built for labor, not love, not softness, not life. But lately, it wasn't just her size that felt strange. Something deeper was changing, something she didn't understand. It started with the dreams, warm dreams filled with strange light and distant heartbeats. She would wake with her hand on her belly, confused, sweating, breath heavy. Then came the weakness. Her legs felt shaky when lifting crates. Her arms trembled. Even when carrying light tools, she told herself she was just tired, maybe overworked. But the feeling didn't go away. One morning, she tried to stand from the table and stumbled. The bowl of stew nearly crashed to the ground. Eli caught her, arms firm and quick. "Whoa, easy," he said, steadying her. "You all right?" "I don't know," she whispered, eyes wide. "Something's wrong." He helped her sit back down, brushing a cold cloth across her forehead. "You've been quieter lately," he said, watching her carefully. She nodded slowly. "I thought I was just sick." But what?" Vesha looked down at her hands. "I've been feeling heat in my chest, in my stomach," she whispered. "My dreams are strange, and I'm always hungry. I sleep too much and still wake tired." Eli pulled up an old medical scanner from the shelf. It was dusty, but still functional. A leftover from a time when human settlers needed emergency gear. "Let's check," he said softly. She hesitated, fear in her throat. "What if I'm broken?" "Then we fix it," he said, turning the scanner on, "or we face it together." She closed her eyes as the scanner buzzed. The soft green light ran over her chest, her abdomen, her arms. Then it made a sharp beep. Eli looked at the screen and froze. Vesha opened one eye and noticed the look on his face. "What is it?" He didn't speak at first, just stared at the results. Then, in a whisper, he said the words that stopped her breath. "You're pregnant." She blinked, confused, then laughed nervously. "That can't be right." But Eli didn't laugh. He turned the screen to show her. Small pulses, barely visible. A second heartbeat. Alive. Vesha's hands shook. "No, that's not possible," she said quickly. "I can't, my kind," said I'm not. Eli placed a hand gently on hers. "They were wrong," he said, voice, but eyes full of wonder. Tears filled her eyes before she even realized. She grabbed the scanner, staring at it like it was lying. "No one ever looked at me and thought I could be a mother," she whispered. "They said I was too much, too big, unfit. I believed them." "You shouldn't have," Eli said, kneeling beside her. "They never saw the real you." Vesha placed both hands on her belly. it wasn't showing yet. But she could feel something now, a warmth, a glow, life, a part of her. And Eli, her voice broke. How is this even possible? Eli chuckled softly. You've seen what the galaxy thinks about humans Deathworlders. Too tough to die. He touched her cheek gently. Maybe our bond broke the rules, but what do we do now? She asked, terrified. Whatever you want to do, he replied. We protect it, raise it, or run if we must, but we don't hide anymore. For the first time in her life, Vesha didn't feel like a mistake. She felt like a miracle. Later, that evening, she stood alone by the small mirror in the bathroom. She lifted her shirt slowly. Her belly looked the same, but somehow, it didn't. She touched it carefully, as if afraid to hurt something inside. Then she whispered through tears. I'm not broken, from the other room. Eli called. Vesha. I'm here, she replied, wiping her face. Dinner's almost ready. There's soup and the fried roots you like. She smiled, hands still over her stomach. I'm coming, she said, and so is someone else, outside the wind. Picked up, and far above the clouds in orbit, a silent probe blinked online. It had heard the heartbeat too, and sent a signal to the ones who would not be happy. Asterisk Vesha couldn't stop touching her belly. She'd wake up with her hand resting on it. She'd pause while washing dishes, her fingers gently pressing against her stomach. There was no bump yet, but she felt it, the warmth, the flutter, the life. Something inside her had changed, and it wasn't just the baby. She had started to believe she was more than what they told her, that she was a mother now, and she belonged to something, to someone. But peace never lasted on ARC-N3, not for long. Eli returned one evening with a strange look on his face. His eyes scanned the hills behind him as he entered the house. He placed the tools on the table quietly, not speaking. Vesha noticed instantly. What is it? She asked, moving closer. He didn't answer at first, then sighed and said, There was a drone above Sector 5. Her heart skipped. Surveillance? Yeah, Eli nodded. Not colony-made either. Not ours? Vesha's breath caught. They know, she whispered. They found me. Eli stepped forward and gently placed his hands on her shoulders. They don't know about the child, he said calmly. Not yet, but she pulled away, fear rising in her throat. No, you don't understand. If they discover it, they'll come. They can't take you, Eli said firmly. They won't take me. Eli, she said, eyes wide and shining. They'll take the baby. That? Silence hit like a punch. Eli froze. Vesha's voice cracked. They study mutations, rare bonds. They will rip it from me before it even grows. I've seen it before. Eli clenched his fists. They'll have to go through me first. She shook her head, desperate. They'll come in ships, with legal orders, with cold doctors and science teams. I'm just an old labor-class alien to them, and our child will be a lab sample. Eli began pacing, heart pounding. He had seen what the Varnix elite did to those they saw as genetic surprises. They didn't honor miracles. They dissected them. Then we leave, he said finally. We get off this rock, find somewhere they won't look. She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. You'd run? With me? I'd burn down the sky for you, he said. Running's easy. Vesha collapsed into his arms, tears slipping down her cheeks. I don't want to lose it, Eli, not after finally feeling alive. You won't, he whispered, holding her tighter. I promise, they'll never get near you. That night, Eli powered up the emergency escape capsule hidden beneath the shed. It was old, barely working, but with some fixes, it could fly them to the nearest moonport. From there, they could disappear. He worked all night, hands dirty, arms shaking with stress, and Vesha stood beside him, holding a light, her other hand never leaving her belly. But time was running out by morning. A message came through the colony relay. Order 9 Delta. Recovery request issued for fugitive Varnex female. Subject identified as genetically compromised. Full authorization for retrieval granted. Vesha stared at the screen in horror. Her image was on it. And beneath that her pregnancy status. They already know, she whispered. Eli shut off the signal and loaded the last tools into the escape pod. We leave tonight, he said. Before the recovery squad lands. But what if they shoot us down? She asked. Then we shoot back, he said coldly. Or we disappear into the night. Vesha was shaking, but not from weakness, from rage, from love, from the fire of a mother ready to protect. They never wanted me, Eli, she said. But now they want what I carry. He took her hand in his. Then let's give them nothing. Far above them, ships were already moving, and on the cliffs outside the colony, black armored scouts had begun to gather. Inside the little house, a mother and a father prepared for a journey that could end in death or freedom, but either way, they would face it together. The small escape pod shook violently as it lifted off from the dusty ground of Arx N3. Inside, Vesha sat strapped into the back seat, her hands gripping the metal frame. Eli was at the front, piloting the old system like he had done it 1,000 times. He hadn't, but he flew like a man who had something to lose. Outside, the patrol ships were closing in. Sirens echoed through the canyons, and Varnex trackers scanned the land for any sign of them, but they were already airborne, climbing into the clouds. They had escaped the ground, but freedom was still far away. I'm detecting a lock-on, Eli shouted, adjusting the controls. One ship's on our tail, Vesha's heart pounded, her hand instinctively resting on her stomach. Her child, their child, was still inside her growing, alive, hopeful, and they were hunting it like a prize. I won't let them take it. She whispered, I'll die first. You're not dying, Eli growled. Not today. Not while I'm breathing. The escape pod shook again, this time from a pulse blast grazing the side. Metal peeled back, sparks flying. Vesha screamed. But Eli shouted back, just hold on. We're almost out of range. Suddenly, the pod dropped, free-falling for a second before Eli redirected power to the thrusters. The movement made Vesha sick, her vision spinning, her muscles tightening, and then pain, a deep keen pain in her lower body, not from fear, not from the fall, something else. She cried out, one hand gripping her seat, the other clenched around her belly. Eli looked back, eyes wide with panic. What is it? I think, she gasped. I think it's time. Eli's heart dropped. Here, now, in a falling, broken ship. But there was no stopping it. The child had chosen this moment, this sky, this escape. It was coming. Eli activated the emergency autopilot and unstrapped himself. He rushed back to her, grabbing the medkit from the wall. I don't know how to. Then just stay with me. She groaned, sweat running down her temples. Just hold my hand. And he did, through the shaking pod, through the alarms and sparks and the red blinking lights. He held her hand. He whispered to her. He told her she was brave. She was strong. She was not alone. Hours felt like minutes, and minutes felt like forever. And then, a cry. Not hers, not Eli's, but a small, living cry, loud and real. Vesha broke down in tears as Eli carefully lifted the newborn into her arms. The baby had small features, soft skin with a mix of human tan and faint violet glow, tiny fingers, blinking eyes, a slow breath, alive, perfect. She's beautiful, Eli whispered. Vesha laughed and cried at once. I was told I could never have this, she said, her voice shaking. They said I was wrong, broken, unfit. He touched her cheek. They were wrong. She looked at the baby, eyes filled with wonder and disbelief. She's mine, ours, and no one's taking her away. Eli said firmly, The pod finally landed on a hidden moon base, an old, abandoned refueling station. Safe, dark, quiet, Eli stepped out first. Scanned the area, then waved her forward. Vesha stepped out. Baby wrapped in a soft cloth against her chest. The stars above looked clearer now, as if even the galaxy had paused to welcome this new life. They found shelter in the control room. It was dusty, forgotten, but good enough. They were safe for now, and that was enough. Vesha sat near a heater, rocking gently. Eli watched from a few feet away, quiet, not wanting to disturb her moment. After a long silence, she looked up. "You know," she said, "I never believed I could be loved." Eli stood slowly and walked toward her. She continued, "I thought my body was wrong, my voice too deep, my hands too rough." She looked at him with shining eyes. "But you looked at me like I was the only one worth loving." Eli knelt beside her, resting his forehead against hers. "I didn't make you worthy, Vesha," he said softly. "You always were. You just didn't know it." The baby yawned gently in her arms, then curled up closer. Vesha smiled a soft, warm smile that melted every scar in her heart. "I don't care where we go now," she said. "As long as we go together," Eli nodded. "We'll build a home somewhere new. For you, for her, for us." And as the stars turned silently above them, a fugitive, a broken soldier, a lost human end. Now, family rested in peace for the first time, together, alive, free.